Today we're going to talk about disturbances.
Okay.
And page 96 of my book is Disturbed Disciples.
Well, it's different. Disturbance is something that I've been described as.
Yeah.
But disturbed, that's different.
That's the people who are caught in disturbances are disturbed. Someone said Jesus is here to comfort the disturbed and to disturb the comforted. The comfortable.
Comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfort.
The comfortable.
That's a bumper sticker.
Well, anyway, that's not new with me. But I find the word disturbed and disturbances on my mind lately, and I thought I'd talk about it. I'm a disturbed disciple today.
Okay.
And
then be it.
The point of reference is the disciples were disturbed because they were tired. They had been at it all day, and a huge crowd turned out. What are we going to do now? This was their question, and they were disturbed. They were in no mood to try to meet the needs of the crowd. And they said, let them go. We don't want them. Let them go. Like illegal immigrants, let them go. That's the mantra we hear a lot lately. And that's one of my disturbances, cause for disturbances.
If it's on your mind, then it's a pointed reflection.
But Jesus said, you do something about it. Don't just run away, and don't just close your mind and your heart especially, but do something about it. And the point of the story is that they had resources they were not aware of. And Jesus, when he met the needs of the crowd, he pulled from them that which they did not know they had. So we have resources within ourselves that we don't even know of. And especially at our points of being low, we think it's the end, nothing, no future.
It's I've had a lot of things happen to me recently. I've had some very big changes in my life financially. And the first 3 days, I came into the studio shaking, crying. Yeah. It's over.
It's over.
It's over. And obviously I'm in a different place now, but we humans, we tend to get low very easily.
Yeah, so there are disturbances of all sorts. Lately we've been very disturbed or occupied, fascinated with the disturbances in nature, in the atmosphere. You have Helene, the hurricane that hit Florida, and 2 weeks later Turner hit again. Now, if I was a fundamentalist Christian, I would say God has something against Florida. DeSantis, get out of there. You're in the way.
I think there's a very deep political humor in problems with Florida.
I say it because when it hit California, I know all these religious superheroes jumped on the matter as being God's judgment, the fires, for example. No, I don't believe in that kind of a God, by the way. I don't think God exists to throw thunderbolts at those who are supposed to, and usually it hits the wrong ones.
It's definitely, from what I've been learning lately, God is definitely very interested in justice. But on a mass scale like that, with that much... Yeah. I don't see that being our God.
Yeah, disturbances in the atmosphere, kind of ironic because if God is judging the sinners, the decadent, he ends up hitting the innocent and burning down houses that are innocent. And this hurricane hitting villages, elderly, retired, that's not God. Okay. But we are aware of disturbances in the atmosphere. And that's a question that we must face. What are the resources within us that can address that situation or that kind of situation? What's causing climate change that's intensifying the strength of these disturbances? You see, that's something else. Then there are disturbances in the world at large, between nations. Before we got started this morning, we were talking about what's happening in the Middle East. It's been happening for a long time, but it's hitting home for us, my wife and I, because Lebanon now is in the middle of it all. The focus has shifted from Gaza, which already has been pulverized, to Lebanon. And the feeling is, are we next? Are we going to get pulverized next, or what? And this kind of disturbance, when it hits home, it does have a lot a deeper effect than when we're watching another country. She told me today, you know, that's my country. I said, well, do you know what happened to my country? Over and over again.
Paratroopers. I remember.
Well, that was Second World War. Thank God he didn't come to our house. But the country of Armenia, which is my native country, has been pulverized a number of times throughout history.
It's very sad.
And most recently, a year ago, a whole big section was taken over by Azerbaijan called Nagorno-Karabakh, and 120,000 people had to flee. So I said, you know, we've got to learn to accept what's happening, do what we can, and move on with life. And that's where faith comes in.
Very much so.
Okay. So the disciples are followers of Jesus. They're people of faith. You and I are followers of Jesus. We are people of faith. So when these things happen, faith addresses it in a variety of ways. It's interesting how it can either drive us inward into a reflexive, introverted kind of, I want to escape it all. And this is what Christians did mostly in the 3rd, 4th centuries when, after Jesus, when the turmoil was such that Christians were put on the spot, many retreated into the desert. In Egypt, they're known as the Desert Fathers. They established monasteries in out-of-way places that still exist today, where in introspection, separated from the world, they carried on their life. So that's one way to do it. To get into our cloister, and I have that tendency right now, is to withdraw and to say, I can't do anything about it, it's out of control, at least let me save myself. And that is a tendency that sometimes works. Monasteries have survived, and the faith that they have maintained is vital faith, vibrant faith. The meditations, the writings, the prayers of the Desert Fathers are classics today.
I've seen them put up in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
They've been expressed in different ways, from serious to comical. But being involved with other people who are praying that hard, everybody in together in that group, the amount of faith that could be multiplied must be. It's true. It must be very supportive. It must be very. I don't know. I'm not a minimalist. I can't give up. I can't give up my cable TV. So I don't know how to turn that internal as of yet, but I can tell you that I'm very jealous of the people that are able to meditate on that level for that long.
Yes.
It's quite impressive. Like almost on the verge of sleep. I've heard about the coffee they drink. Yeah. So they're not asleep, they're just before asleep, and they stay awake with the caffeine, and they find that middle zone where they're really able to dial in their meditation. And I've always been jealous of that.
And I've been also, but I also have been aware that that type of existence cannot be maintained for too long. The most famous of these is a man known as Simon Stylites.
Okay.
He was in Syria in the 3rd or 4th century, and he climbed on a pillar and sat on a pillar.
That's where it came from.
And didn't move. The pillar sitters. You've heard of people who sit on pillars?
Well, I didn't realize the name was that simple.
Simon Stylites in Greek. He sat there and sat there. He became famous. People would come to him at the base, and he would share his faith and wisdom with people. But how long could you stand there? Well, eventually he died. I don't know if he fell off or what. I don't remember. But to the point where even the lice falling off his body were considered holy. I mean, that's how ridiculous religion can get. And so beyond prayers, you come to this kind of extremities that are ridiculous.
I remember a lady from our church. She said something very prophetic. She said, God is not religion. And this is where I was first able to start making the differences. And when you say religion, because it was hard for me to understand, we say, well, religion is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But you're like, but God is serious. And I'm like, I couldn't make the connection.
Yeah.
Find out that people created religion and now lice are being probably sold on eBay.
And how can we who are caught in religion step out to prevent the limitations that religion puts on us to act with faith and courage?
And there it is.
Okay, now, these disturbances, I talk on the world, on the political scene, disturbances in America. Now, I do a lot of reading, and I've been reading for a long time, and I know that we are headed into an uncharted waters, as they say.
You've been mentioning that.
Politically.
Yes.
It disturbs me because I don't like the way it's going.
I agree. And most people would agree with you too.
And I will share my political views at this point. I will not celebrate the direction Christianity is taking in America. Forget about the political side of it, the religious part. These disturbances are creating disturbances within the ranks of the faithful, the disciples.
Oh my goodness.
And we are at the point where Christians in America want to use their faith as a way of being aggressive in determining the course this country is going to take.
Aggression is never a good answer.
Okay, now,
or a good policy.
Faith always has a proactive, maybe I don't want to use aggressive, proactive aspect of it. It should. As Jesus said, don't just stand or sit there, do something. Someone says, don't just do something, sit there. Some of us are too active. We act before we know what we're going to do, and we have to pull back.
You know, they're just on that point. I every once in a while, you know, you're at a stoplight, and I have my child in the back of the car, and there's these evangelists, you know, on the side of the road, you know, with their microphones and their little speakers and their signs, and trying to convert people and or spread the word or whatever they're trying to do. And some of them are captivating and wonderful.
Sure.
And some of them are just gone.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Some guy went off on a COVID tangent. So I can understand that there's some people that need to back up and understand how to be proactive in a positive way rather than just active for the sake of being active. So I do understand what you're saying.
And being active in religious circles is to organize religion as a means of affirming and fulfilling their expectations as to what God wants to do with us in this life. In America, Christian nationalism is a word used often now.
I remember the episode we discussed that.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different dimensions to it. I recently viewed a film when I was in Sedona, supposed to be the center of the universe. The vortexes are there and all that kind of stuff. I saw a movie which was very disturbing. It's called Bad Faith.
Oh,
Look it up on YouTube.
Yes, I will.
Bad Faith, how Christian nationalism is, what's the word, destroying democracy in America.
Wow.
Okay? I don't know if the word is destroying or not, but affecting democracy in America. And this movie, which I knew about, mentions a few points in there that mean a lot to me. personally. It talks of one of the founders, whom I knew personally, Rusas Rashtuni, and his father was a pastor in a little church in Kingsburg. And this is not the first time religion has been used as a tool, as a mighty tool to overcome opposition in history. And it's happening again among us. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the peace," by the way, when they quote Christianity, they don't quote Jesus, which is an interesting phenomenon. They will quote everybody else, but not Jesus, because Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." In other words, use your energy, use your creativity to create peace, not war. Easy to create war. As a kid, it was easy for me to pick up a stick and hit my buddy, but it was very hard for me to hold back and say, no, I should not do that. Instead, I should go and say, hey, let's be friends. Okay.
That's actually where we are currently with our sermon right now, too, at Tustin Presbyterian, is loving your neighbor as yourself, which is a very interesting concept.
And interesting enough, people say, now, who's my neighbor? Because that's naturally what comes to your mind. And that's what the man next to Jesus said, who's my neighbor?
I remember that.
Okay.
I remember that. That's a bit of a rhetorical question. Can I put it that way? It's, I know the answer, but I don't want to know the answer. Is that where we're...
And we choose our neighbors. Interestingly enough, I've got 5 or 6 neighbors. We're in a cul-de-sac. How I make choices. In my mind, I analyze my thought. There is one in the neighborhood who is very aggressive in being pro one of the candidates for presidency right now. And he puts out signs that are disturbing. And I feel like going and saying, okay, buddy, I hold back. So disturbances in America today are very real. They are taking Christianity beyond Christ to the point where it's going to be like a new crusade of some sort, taking up the sword instead of the Bible as our instrument. So, disturbed disciples. We are disturbed personally. I am going to have surgery 1 week.
That's right.
Now, that's a disturbing thought. All week long, I'm going in and out of doctors' offices to be checked, pre-surgery clearance of some sort, x-ray one day, blood test another day. I kept saying, who needs this? Why do I have to put up with all this? It's disturbing. And then they tell you, oh, it's not going to be, then let us give you the possibilities. Among the possibilities are, I may die. And I have to sign a statement saying, if that happens, don't sue us. If I die, I'm going to be able to sue them anyway. But those are disturbing thoughts. Is the surgeon going to be good or not? Is the medication going to be good? What's going to happen afterwards? Am I going to be able to walk or not?
I find myself in the same thoughts when I fly.
Okay,
Is the pilot sober?
Yeah.
Is the plane fixed? Was the mechanic worried about some argument he had with his wife the night before?
That's true.
I understand the pieces.
I had a friend who used to, every time I get in an airplane, I look out and say, are these the people I'm going to be, they're going to go to heaven with me when I die if the plane crashes?
It's a natural thought. I think if God wanted us to fly, he'd given us wings.
Well, that's true.
I like the ground. I'm a big fan of it.
And that's true. Some creationist, literalist who said if God wanted us to see the microscopic, he would have given us eyes that could read without the microscope. We don't need
like a hawk.
So it goes on and on and on. But we are disturbed. We are disturbed not only for physical reasons, but for other reasons, financially. We need finances.
That's a big one.
And to what extent should we allow our worries to disturb us? one of the, I thought maybe the next one I talk about is profit and loss, economics. But Jesus said, don't worry. In chapter 5 of Matthew, he says, be anxious for your life. But we are anxious.
Constantly anxious.
So how can we lower the level of anxiety? Faith has been given to us for that reason. Faith says the one in charge beyond yourself is God. And if I'm to walk without shoes, I'll walk without shoes, if God directs me in that regard. But if I'm going to wear shoes, I pray God will give me good shoes.
Definitely. I like the I can't remember the chapter of the book because I'm new, but I remember recently we're talking about greater is he that is in you that is anywhere else in the world.
That's
I'm
right.
still working on that one.
Than the one who is outside of you.
Yes, so there's more inside of me than there is outside in the world, and when you start to grasp these concepts, which you have many times, but when I grasp them for the first time, you're darn tootin'. I don't hope I'm not going too far with that. That my stress and my anxiety drop instantly.
Yeah.
Greater is he that is in me.
Yeah.
That is anywhere in the world. So when we read these things and you bring these to light, you know, you're right. Faith does calm the soul.
And I was in Geneva Presbyterian Church. I was their pastor for a couple of years back, 2001 or 2002. A man came running in saying, I need help. And I said, what is that? He said, there's so many evil spirits around us. They're oppressing me. I'm bothered. I had to set him down and say, do you believe in Christ? Yes, I believe. I said, well, greater is he who is in you than those who are outside of you. There's an impervious shell you have with Christ that cannot be penetrated. So hang on to Christ. And when you hang on to Christ, hang on to what he said to us about ourselves. It's not a magical thing. You've got to believe his words. And so that's very real in my experience. And today there's renewed emphasis upon spirits, demons, this and that. Movies are being made about that. And I say, as a believer, the one who's in you is greater than everything outside of you. Now,
so nice to know.
Yeah, so we're back to him again now. Where does Christ stand in the midst of this kind of situations we find ourselves in? And I'd like to talk about that. We still have time today? Okay. It's interesting in this story that Jesus was looking for a lonely place. He was tired too. See, this is the human Jesus fascinates me.
There's a lot to relate to.
Yeah, because that's us. That's you and I. He was tired, as were the disciples, and he wanted to get away. He wanted some leisure and some peace. But the crowd that pressed in on him as well as on the disciples.
Crowds have a tendency to...
Yeah, and so Christ does not stand apart from me, but is there with me experiencing what I'm experiencing. And that is what's so comforting about faith in him, because he did not use faith to escape controversy, disturbances, but he was there in the midst of it. And ultimately, of course, the cross is an outstanding example of what I'm talking about. Now, Jesus said, I'm not going to send them away. You give them something to eat. I can always give my neighbors something to eat. Even though I may have only a piece of bread, I can break a piece off and give it to him. That's the beauty about our faith. Our faith helps us to have a realistic assessment of who we are and what we have. And what we have, according to faith, will be sufficient for our needs. We don't have to have more and more and more and more. It's like the man who had all the money stashed away. He wanted more. He wanted more. And Jesus said, "You fool, you're going to die tonight. Use it while you can. You have the resources." So Jesus is there not for a magical intervention for us, but for a human, for an understandable, and for a rational sense of support for us.
That we can understand.
That we can understand. The disciples thought a cozy and intimate relationship with him would be a heavenly experience. But Jesus taught them that God was in the crowd. No, God was in the crowd. And that missing the opportunity to feed them would be missing the opportunity to experience God.
Well, this guy is all about the people.
Yeah. His presence and his word. God doesn't exist in a magical way apart from reality that we surround ourselves with, but God is there in it. And God is like, I'm always amazed in a hurricane, an airplane that is outfitted to go and penetrate it to measure its strength flies right into it. Oh my God, I don't think I would ever, if I were a pilot, I don't think I'd ever want to.
And I think we've all been on planes that have been in the middle of some sort of,
yeah.
And we just didn't know it.
And we say, how soon is this going to stop? It's shaking, God, help it to stop. Well, they fly into it knowing they're going to fly into it. This is faith. I live it at that today. And what will we do with it? It's up to you and me.
Now that's the question.
That's the question.